In this video, I'll be doing an Edison blackwing deck list. This is a deck that focuses heavily on board destruction being the ability to destroy cards on your opponent's board. To start, I'll talk about the out-of-archetype staples. Now, staples are just cards that, while not belonging to an archetype, are just generally good for gameplay. For example, to start out with, we have DD Crow, which is a card known as a hand trap, which you send to the graveyard from your hand in order to complete an effect. In this case, it is to banish one of your opponent's cards from their graveyard. Next up, we have Dark Arm Dragon, also known in format as Dad. The effect of this monster is that it cannot be normal summoned, but can be special summoned if you have exactly 3 dark monsters in the graveyard. Secondly, while it's on the field, you can banish dark monsters from your graveyard in order to destroy cards on your opponent's field. Starting off our staple spell cards, we have Brain Control, which by paying 800 life points allows us to take control of one of our opponent's monsters, which in turn can be used for a tribute summon or one of our many synchros. Next up, we have Nobleman of Crossout, which targets one face-down monster on the field. It destroys that monster and then banishes it, and if that monster happened to be a flip effect monster, which is a special type, then it would search out all copies of that monster in both players' deck and banish those as well. Next we have Allure of Darkness, which is a very simple card, simply allowing you to draw 2 cards at the cost of banishing a dark monster from your hand at the end of the draw. Although this card can be risky to use if you have no dark monsters in hand at the beginning of activation, because it forces you to discard your entire hand if you do not have a dark monster to banish. Next up is another very simple card. Mystical Space Typhoon simply targets one spell or trap on the field and destroys it. Next we have Book of Moon, which targets one monster on the field and sets it into face-down defense position. Now this card can also be comboed with Nobleman of Crossout by setting one opponent's monsters face down and then banishing it with Nobleman of Crossout. Next we have Mirror Force, the first example of a board wipe in this deck list, as its effect states that if you are attacked, you can flip this card face up in order to destroy all attack position monsters your opponent controls. Next we have Dust Tornado, which is good because it's Mystical Space Typhoon, but allows us to set a spell or trap immediately after its effect is activated, normally on your opponent's turn. We then have Bottomless Trap Hole, which, when your opponent summons a monster with 1500 or more attack, you can instantly destroy that monster, also banishing it. Keep in mind, however, that it does not negate the summon, which means if your opponent's monster has a protection effect, it will not be effective. We then have Compulsory Evacuation Device, which allows you to target one monster on the field, either yours or your opponent's, and return that monster to the hand. It can be used to remove one of your opponent's combo starters from the board or to protect one of your monsters from attack. After that, we have Icarus Attack, one of your strongest trap cards in the deck. This card allows you to tribute one of your winged beast monsters in order to destroy 2 cards on your opponent's board. We have another defensive trap with Dimensional Prison. This card allows you to target one attacking monster your opponent controls and banish it. This activates before the attack, therefore stopping it. We then have Starlight Road, which whenever 2 or more cards you control would be destroyed, you can activate this card, negate the effect that would destroy those 2 cards, and special summon a Stardust Dragon from the extra deck without first needing to synchro summon. For our last trap card, we have Solemn Judgment, which, when a monster would be summoned or a spell or trap card is activated, you can pay half your life points to negate either the summon or the activation of the spell trap, as well as sending the negated card to the graveyard. With our staples done, we'll start with our in-archetype cards with Vayu, the Emblem of Honor. This monster's effect is that it cannot be used on the field as a tuner for a synchro summon. However, while in the graveyard, you can target one other blackwing's monster in the grave, banish those 2 monsters in order to synchro summon from your extra deck. After Vayu, we have Blizzard the Far North. This card is a tuner much like Vayu, however does not have an effect stating that it cannot be used on the field for a synchro summon. Its effect, however, allows you to revive 1 blackwings from the graveyard. Next we have Gale the Whirlwind, probably the strongest tuner in your deck. Gale is special as he has 2 abilities, one of which is if you control a blackwings monster other than Gale the Whirlwind, you can special summon him from hand, and his other is as long as he's on the field, once per turn, you can have the attack and defense of one of your opponent's monsters. Now the attack loss stays even if Gale leaves the field, so you can have a monster's attack and then use Gale as a tuner to synchro summon. We then have Kalut the Moonshadow, another excellent example of a hand trap. Kalut's effect allows you to send him from hand to graveyard whenever a blackwing monster is attacking or being attacked to give said blackwing monster 1400 bonus attack. Next we have Bora the Spear, which similarly to Gale the Whirlwind has the ability to special summon himself from the hand if you control another blackwing monster. Bora also has a second effect, which is to deal piercing battle damage, which means if the monster Bora is attacking is in defense position, it will still deal damage to your opponent, which it normally would not. Next we have Shura the Blue Flame. This monster's effect is when it destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can special summon 1 blackwings monster with 1500 or less attack from your deck. A common target for this effect is actually Vayu. As this effect negates the summoned monster's effect, caveat of Vayu, which it cannot be used for a synchro summon while on the field, is negated, and Vayu still gets his effect to synchro summon from the graveyard. Ashura's effect negation does not continue after destruction or tribute. Last of all, for our main deck monsters, we have Sirocco the Dawn. While this card as a level 5 would normally require 1 card in tribute, if only your opponent controls a monster, you can normal summon him without tributing. He also has the effect where he can target 1 blackwing monster on your board. That monster gains attack equal to all monsters on the board, but only that monster can attack for the rest of the turn. Finally, starting off with our extra deck, I will start with staples, just like with the main deck, and our first card will be Ally of Justice, Cadastor. This monster has the incredibly powerful effect to destroy any non-dark monster it faces at the beginning of the damage step. After that, we have Magical Android. As another level 5 out of archetype card, it has the same combos required to summon it as Cadastor. Its effect is it gives you 600 life points for every psychic monster you control. While not the most useful, it can make some of your other life point draining activities, such as Solemn Judgment, less of a risk. Next up, we have Bryanak, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. As a level 6, this card can be summoned by using Blizzard to bring back one of your level 4 monsters in order to synchro summon. Its effect allows you to, once per turn, discard any number of cards, and then return that number of cards from your opponent's field to their hand. Side note, this does not count as destruction, so any card that would prevent cards from being destroyed do not work on this. Black Rose Dragon is probably one of the most important staples for any synchro deck during Edison format. In this deck, this card can only be summoned by synchro summoning using one of your level 4s with Gale the Whirlwind. Its effect allows you to on-summon tribute it to destroy all cards on the board. This effect is non-targeting and wipes the entire board simultaneously, so no protection effects can go off, making it great to destroy a winning board in order to make a comeback. Next we have Dark End Dragon, a level 8 synchro. Typically, to get this monster on the board, you would already have one of the lower level synchro monsters, as well as one of your tuners in order to synchro summon into this one. This card's effect allows you to make it lose 500 attack in order to destroy 1 card on your opponent's field. Next we have Stardust Dragon. Your primary method of summoning this monster will be Stardust Road, the trap card I mentioned earlier. This monster's effect allows it to banish itself in order to negate and destroy 1 card that is activating its effect. During the end phase it activated this effect, it is special summoned back onto the field. Now, as a quick effect, it can be activated on your opponent's turn as well. A trick to getting this monster out is to activate Icarus attack and target 2 of your cards instead of some of your opponent's. This will allow you to activate the Icarus attack and special summon your Stardust Dragon even if your opponent is not interacting with your board. For our last staple extra deck monster, we have Thought Ruler Archfiend. The monster's first effect is that if it destroys a monster by battle, you gain life points equal to that monster's original attack. And its second effect is that if a spell or trap card is activated, you can pay 1000 life points to negate it. Into the final stretch, we have our in-archetype extra deck monsters, starting out with Armed Wing. This card's effect allows it to gain 500 attack when attacking a defense position monster and dealing piercing damage, meaning even though you're attacking a defense position monster, you still deal damage. Next up is by far my favorite extra deck monster in this deck, Armor Master. This card's effect stops it from being destroyed in battle and preventing you from taking any damage from a battle it would have been destroyed in. At the end of that battle phase, he places a counter on your opponent's monster called a wedge counter. This counter can be removed to make that monster's attack and defense become 0. And at last on the final card, we have Silverwind the Ascendant. When this card is summoned, you can target 2 monsters on the field with defense lower than Silverwind's attack and destroy those monsters. The drawback to this effect, however, is that you cannot conduct a battle phase on that turn. He also grants a once per turn destruction prevention from battle for any blackwing on the board. However, the effect is shared between all blackwings and will only commence once per turn on your opponent's turn.